We went direct with crews today, and we also used retardant in several places to keep the fire where it's at, both north and south. So this is looking real good tonight. There's a lot of action taking place. We are being challenged with spots outside the line, some really steep and inaccessible terrain as we get up into the rock escarpment, but crews are still working, trying to piece all this together to hold it where it's at. Again, a lot of good work that took place out here today. I'm going to shift over now right into into more of the proper area of the fire, where you see a lot of this stuff up near what we call Fruit Growers Boulevard, and just outside Antelope Lake. All through this area held today on our fire lines. It was in a lot of resources were out there, things held in their current footprint, nothing escaped the lines, and things looked really manageable today. Again, still interior heat, still fire along the edges. Crews continue to patrol, crews continue to mop up, they continue to be engaged all around this outside of everything from basically from the Westwood all the way back around up to Antelope Lake. As you move down through this Walker fire scar, fire continues to creep and move slowly in here. It is moving, it's moving so slow that we don't see it as any issues in here, and it's cleaning up some of the dead and down material from the past Walker fire. As you move around past Mud Lake into what we call the Beardsley Grade area, Long Arm Road, where this fire continues to back down into the Taylorsville Road into Genesee Valley. Fire is backing off the slope. We've had some lines that were put in place and they've been challenged the last couple days. Those lines have had spot fires over them. We've engaged all of the spots. We've gone after them, and then we get more spots in that timber and steep terrain where it continues to back down. All of the homes that are down in here in the bottom, there's multiple companies there, crews, resources that have lined behind the houses with mechanized equipment, dozers. They've got hose around the houses, and they've been engaged in there the last 2 days in anticipation of receiving the fire as it slowly backs down the hill. Our strategy for in here is to do just that, is to let it be patient, be disciplined, let it come down the hill, and let it just clean up the understory and be in a position to receive the fire in and around the bottom of these communities in here, including Taylorsville. Early this morning, we had, after the northeast wind event that put the column kind of bent over the Taylorsville area and out towards Quincy from all of this, when that was doing that, we picked up a spot about 2.5 miles away from the main fire that was on the actual south side of the valley. It was located about 2/3 of the way up, and it's grown to about 30 acres in size. We immediately started working it with aircraft, and we've checked it today. We continue to use aircraft in there. Simultaneously, we were building the Grizzly Ridge line. That Grizzly Ridge line has gotten out about 2 to 3 miles of line has been completed. We continue, it still needs more work. We're starting to use some logging equipment, some processors, feller bunchers, and mechanized equipment up here to prepare this line. When this spot occurred, we've punched some dozers a little higher up on Grizzly Peak, built in some safety zones so we can build access, so we can start building a box in the event that this runs up to the ridge. Again, it's in steep and accessible terrain. We have one hotshot crew that's been checking on it to figure out the best access, but when you get in this steep terrain and the trees are burning, stuff will roll out and come down below you. It makes it very, very difficult for crews to get in there because it is so high on the slope. You just can't go out and grab it, and we do not have road access in there. So every attempt is being made to corral this and hold it where it's at. More than likely it will come up the ridge, and we'll be ready to prepare. We'll be prepared for it based upon the actions that we have been taking as a defensive measure up here. As I move kind of southernly along the fire perimeter, things look pretty good, and to kind of close up Indian Valley, you still see open line. We still do have heat signatures in there. We're really pressed on equipment. We're pressed on the number of resources that we have and spread so thin between fighting fire, not only out in the area of Janesville and Milford, but also up around the Antelope Lake area, protection of structures and houses in Greenville, direct suppression strategies on the fire here, dealing with the spot here, and at the same time holding on to everything that has happened over the course of the last month on this fire. All the way back, we continue to find heat on the fire. We still have our RPs reporting various heat signatures along the outside of the fire where we're sending resources to deal with them. And as people are moving in and around the fire area, more things are popping up. Today, over in the Dyer Mountain area, which is still being worked on this zone, we had a spot fire come outside our containment lines. Though when it got outside our containment lines in this area, it grew to about 15 to 20 acres, and we were able to get some retardant on it. Also use heavy helicopters, and we went direct with crews from both the east and the west zone, and they're still working on it tonight. That is an overall operational update for your eastern zone of the fire.
Thank you for that update, Chad. Our next speaker tonight will be the Lassen County Sheriff's Office Public Information Officer, Lisa Bernard. Lisa?
Hi, good evening. I'm Lisa Bernard from the Sheriff's Office in Lassen County, and the Sheriff asked me to apologize for him tonight. He is down in Milford with his deputies, and they have very unreliable cell service down there right now, so he was not able to attend this evening. So he did want me to extend his thanks to all of our community partners that have been helping with mutual aid, and to extend our gratitude to the public for their cooperation and for their patience. We know this is a very trying event for everyone, and we just really appreciate them working with us on all of this. So having said that, we have a very large part of our county right now that is under mandatory evacuation order and evacuation warning. And I'm not going to cover every area that is still under order or warning, but we are encouraging the community to check their status on community.zonehaven.com. That's a new service that we're using. You can go type your address in the search engine on that, and it will take you right to what your status is. We have had a few issues with people saying that they, if they live right on the border of their zone, it'll show them in the wrong status. We're not sure how to fix that, but one thing that seems to help is if you type in your entire address, including the zip code, and that seems to fix that problem. So, so go to community.zonehaven.com to check the status of your evacuated area. And we do update that immediately when we change a status. Sometimes you have to hit refresh on your browser if you're not seeing the update. If you've gotten a notice but you're not seeing the update, hit refresh, and sometimes that'll fix the problem also. So we've had a lot of calls about reducing evacuation status in Westwood, especially when folks from Chester were able to go home the other day. And we did have some preliminary planning in place to allow people from Westwood to return under an evacuation warning, which is a reduction from an order. However, we have several things that we consider when we think about reducing those orders, and one of them is safety. Primarily, are we able to get you back to that area safely? And then once we have you back there, are we able to get you out if things don't go the way that we think they're going to? And so those are our primary concerns, along with road conditions, infrastructure. And as most of you know, right now, Westwood is without power. They don't have electricity. And between Susanville and Westwood, they're doing a lot of road conditions. So the roads aren't in great condition right now to begin with. And then there's also active fire burning along the Highway 36 corridor on Hamilton Mountain, which is commonly known here as Fredonia Pass. So we just didn't feel like it was safe to do that. We still are evaluating every day with the incident management team on the fire, and we make those determinations on a day-to-day basis. So same issue with Janesville right now, still active fire burning in that area, not really considered safe at this time, especially with expected wind changes over the next couple of days to reduce any of those evacuation orders. And that's my update for this evening.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Next, we're going to have the Plumas County Sheriff's Office, Todd Johns.
Good evening. I'm Plumas County Sheriff Todd Johns. Starting off, there were a number of changes yesterday in our evacuation zone status. I'm sure most people know that, but if you don't, if your zone was downgraded from a mandatory order to a warning, please understand that there are still risks in those areas. Stay aware of changing conditions and continue to be prepared to leave at a moment's notice if need be. Those updated changes as of yesterday are, in summary, we repopulated the area around Lake Almanor to include Chester proper, West Shore, East Shore, Highway 147. Additionally, we opened Highway 89 through Greenville. which it was previously closed at Pioneer Road, so Highway 89 through Greenville to get to Chester. And I want to remind folks, if you're traveling that corridor, what that means is that Greenville, what I would call Greenville proper, or the town itself, is still under a mandatory evacuation order. When you're traveling through the town of Greenville, you cannot deviate off of Highway 89 for any circumstances. We are patrolling that area heavily. We do have National Guard in the area. So again, if you're using that corridor, you can only drive Highway 89. Big Meadows across from Prattville is also open. It is in a mandatorily evacuated area as well. So it is open to residents only. So if you're not a resident, you need to stay out of that area. And I had a question about the community that's up north of Chester, and I'm drawing a blank on that area right now, but it is still under a mandatory evacuation. Additionally, yesterday we had some issues with Highway 36, and those conditions continue. So I want to remind folks that if you're trying to travel out of Chester, be cautious of the road conditions on Highway 36, as well as the fact that there's still a lot of fire traffic in those areas. And the area that's still closed out of Chester is Warner Valley. So Warner Valley Road did not open yesterday. There's still active fire in that area, so we were unable to repopulate that. I also want to remind folks that Seneca District Hospital is still closed. So if you are planning on returning to Chester and you have some type of medical condition that would require some type of care in the hospital, be cognizant of that and maybe wait to repopulate Chester or to come back to Chester. Consult your district's authority for information on drinking water, because some of those areas the water was affected a bit. And then remember that essential services in those areas may be limited or reduced. Continuing, our animal care services team has been doing a great work with the support of the Sonoma Community Animal Response Team in housing and caring for evacuated animals, responding to thousands of emergency calls, providing food and water to animals in evacuated and burned areas, and are going to continue to make every effort to get animals that they've picked up reunited with their owners. As of today, the Veterinary Emergency Response Team from UC Davis embedded with our Animal Services team, and they're providing care for fire-injured animals free of cost. Their services include a mobile hospital, and I can't thank Yolo County enough for sending us that resource. We know these animals are important members of folks' family, and we want to appreciate all the efforts to make sure evacuees have one less thing to worry about. So the animals that we have in our care, and we continue to try to locate animals, they're being taken care of by some amazing folks. So we did open a local assistance center today, and at the old probation building at 1446 East Main Street in Quincy, and we'll continue to operate that through Saturday. It's open 11 to 6. It'll have some great resources for residents from local to state agencies. So as a lot of folks in Canyon Dam, Greenville, and the surrounding areas know, we've reached out and we're trying to gather information, or we have been gathering information from residents on addresses that, if you believe your property may have been destroyed, over the next day or so, you will start getting notifications and given times to when we will be able to escort you into your property to basically do a visual check of your property, take some photos. I want to let folks know this is not a visit where we're going to let folks start sifting through their ashes of their residence or moving debris. This is so that you can actually see your residence and take some photographs. What will have to happen after that is we will start Tuesday of next week what we call phase 1, which is when the state will come to your property and start removing hazardous materials, things like solvents and things like that. After that process is done, which I'm told may take as long as 2 to 3 weeks, hopefully not, but could take as long as 2 to 3 weeks. There will be next phase that will happen is phase 2, which is the actual debris cleanup. And sometime within those two phases, we will let owners return to their property and actually kind of look for things of value. And again, if you need to take more pictures and things like that. Residents who actually have structures will be able to return to their residence at that time, dependent on water, sewer, and power. So at this time, we get a lot of questions as to why folks can't just go back to their home if they know that it has survived the fire. The reality is it's still serious public health considerations because there's no power, water, or sewer. So we need to make sure that those have been returned prior to doing that. Additionally, I've received some questions about, well, PG&E and other infrastructure folks are in those areas, and why aren't they falling under the same guidelines as residents? And the reality is that they are not in the actual footprints of structure that have those hazardous materials in them. So they're able to go in there and start their work, and again, that's part of the recovery process to get folks back to their homes quickly. A couple of other things. Folks know that I met with the governor a couple weeks ago and that we've been working closely with OES. One of the requests that I made to OES and the governor were that they give the county a loan until this process is finished. And they officially today sent a check to the county for $5 million. And the reason why that's important is it allows the county to continue on with basically normal activities during this time and to cover the costs of this fire. So that's a positive thing. Additionally, the state OES sent up 4 folks yesterday that went around the town of Greenville identifying properties where we can start putting housing. I was told that was very successful. We're meeting again tomorrow to identify those properties and actually bring some engineers in to see what it would take to get the infrastructure into those places. So again, as we were moving forward, I'm told we were moving much more quickly than other areas have or other places within the state. So that's very positive to me. And in closing, I just want to thank, we have several local restaurants, and I'm not going to name all of them, but several local restaurants that have been providing meals for my law enforcement officers well over the past month, and I want to thank every one of them. Without their services, I would have to, well, and the fire camp also has provided meals, but we don't want to strain them, so our local restaurants have really come through. And as always, the public, I thank you for your support, and just know, as usual, we're going to get you back to your residence and start the recovery process as quickly as possible, and I just thank you for your patience. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheriff. That was a lot of really great information. Our next speaker will be Deb Bumpus. She's the Forest Supervisor for the Lassen National Forest.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Deb Bumpus. I'm the Forest Supervisor on the Lassen National Forest here in Susanville. It's been a while since I've been with you. We wanted to spend a little bit more time in previous sessions just talking more about the operational aspects of the fire. But I wanted to check in with you all tonight as some folks are starting to go back home or starting to get back into their communities. We wanted to talk about a couple of things that we want to make sure that you're aware of and that you keep up with as you move about the forest or start moving about the forest. We've had some weather changes in the last few days and the winds have shifted. And when that happens and after we've had a fire, you know, there are a lot of snags out there. There's a lot of trees that are green, dry, and could break. So just be careful when you're going into those areas and make sure that you look around before you go in. If you stop in the road to look at things, make sure you're not standing underneath any limbs that look like they could break. It's also really important as you're walking out into the forest that you watch where you're stepping, because there's a lot of burned out stumps that you will not notice until you fall into them, and there still could be some fire in those. Very dangerous conditions. It's best if you don't get off into the forest, and if you do travel into the forest, just stay on the roads as much as you possibly can. And then the last thing is just being aware of your favorite places in the forest. They're all going to look different. You know, we have different things that make these places important to us. The places that are important to families for many generations, they're going to look different. We have to find things to be optimistic about and not just concentrate on the damaging impacts of the fire to the communities and to each other, but know that, you know, with a little bit of time, things will come back. We'll try our best to get dead trees down and get the forest replanted. You'll probably see willows coming back a lot quicker along the streams than in other places. You might see aspen coming up in places that you've never seen before in wet areas. So just know that we're all affected by this in very many ways. There's a lot of individuals with the Forest Service who have been working on projects in areas for many years that they don't have a tie to that anymore because they were burned up. So we've got to find ways to look forward and to find useful ways to do our work and to bring it back to the beautiful places that you're used to. So I just wanted to have those short statements for you tonight. I really hope that you are safe when you go out in the forest, and that if you have any questions on anything, either call the fire shops in Quincy or in Susanville, or you can call the supervisor's offices in Quincy or in Susanville to answer those questions. So thank you very much and have a good evening.
All right, really good information. Our next speaker will be the Forest Supervisor from the Plumas National Forest, Chris Carlton.
Thank you and good evening. So I'm gonna take this opportunity to just add on a little bit to what Deb was talking about. You know, she's talking about going out in the forest, and just a little bit ago, we do have a little bit of a change, and I want to update everybody. Our regional forester, Jen Eberlein, signed a closure order closing the 9 of the northern forests in California in our region. Just across the board, closed to public access and visitation. And I know that's not ideal. None of us like anything to be completely closed off. I think we understand the forest closures, but a lot of you may be wondering, well, why would we have, you know, closures of everything? And it's really because right now we have over 100 large fires nationally that we're battling. You know, we've seen in these communities, we see firsthand the challenges around what these fires are doing. And so we do not have the resources either within the state or within the nation to battle additional fires. And first and foremost, we need to make sure we're making decisions that put public safety and emergency responder and firefighter safety first and foremost. And that's what the regional forester is doing with this order. This is only a temporary order through September 6th. And I really want to acknowledge, as someone who lives in we live in these communities for a reason, because we love them. We love being outdoors. It's the beginning of hunting season. It's great camping and fishing time normally. And so we recognize that this is definitely something nobody likes to have to see. But I think we can all agree the conditions out there are just really dangerous right now. And we need to make sure that we're taking every action we can to protect people and reduce the possibility of new fire starts. So really appreciate it. I know there's going to be a lot of questions. We'll continue to get information. If you have your questions, go ahead, post them. We'll get back to you. We'll get that order up on the Facebook page. So thanks, and we'll go on with that as we continue through the next couple weeks, seeing how the conditions change. Another thing I wanted to respond to, last community meeting, there were a couple of comments about a couple of our folks here wearing masks and gloves. And you know, I appreciate the comments because they really help us highlight. We all hoped a year ago that we would be done with COVID. we would be in a different place, and we wouldn't have our masks, we wouldn't need the gloves. And if you could look around this room, you'll see that there are almost no people in it, and there's a huge wide open space, which is the reason I'm able to stand here like this. But I want to recognize that we are seeing a lot of COVID cases come up within our communities, across the nation, within our state, and our firefighters are not exempt, of course. We're seeing some of our most critical resources get impacted by COVID, that new Delta variant. We all recognize how important those hotshot crews, those engines are, those dozer operators, and we've had some of all of those taken out of operation because of COVID. And so here on the incident, that firefighter safety is first and foremost. And so we put these measures in place like we did last year, and we've seen a great improvement because of that. But I also want to recognize that we need to keep doing that. And so for those of you who made the comments around the masks and the gloves, I really appreciate your taking the time and just wanted to explain a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing. And then just the last thing, we're partway through fire season, and as challenging as this has been, we see those winds daily changing, and we see changed fire behavior out there, and the risks kind of changing on a daily basis. So continue to ask you within the communities, please be prepared to evacuate if the sheriff makes that decision. I think we all need to be flexible and get through this together. The last thing I'm going to end with, we have some daily discussions with our employees here in the forest. One thing we end with is, let's talk about one positive thing. That's there's a lot of tragedy out there. There's a lot of impact. But let's pick one little thing to share and kind of wrap up. And so I would ask each of you out there, let's look for those little pieces of positive stuff. And if you have a little positive story or something that you found, go ahead and post that as well. Let's put some positive energy out there on the Facebook page. Recognize these community meetings are about information, but they're also an opportunity for us to come together and kind of connect a little bit as communities in the middle of tragedy. So thank you. Have a great evening and stay safe.
Thank you so much for that. So I do want to remind everybody that we are streaming these both on the Lassen and the Plumas National Forest page. We will post these on our story map, and they will be available on INCIWeb if you do not have Facebook after the occurrence. We're going to get into the question and answer phase of the portion of this evening, so if you haven't added your question to the chat, please do so now. Our first question is to our sheriff, and it is on access to run generators and restoration of water and power. Sheriff Johns?
Okay, so as I mentioned before, part of returning to your residence is the critical infrastructure, and what we would consider critical infrastructure in Greenville would be sewer and water. As we know, there's lots of times when we don't have power in Greenville, and while we like that infrastructure, that is really not one of them. But the reality is it presents certain health risks when you don't have water or sewer. Additionally, we recognize the fact that folks are going to return home and have a tremendous amount of probably rotted food in the refrigerators. So we kind of include the facts that we have dumpsters that will be in town when we do return. So again, we're looking at water and sewer. My understanding is that the sewer is coming along fairly well. However, the water itself, they have to have tested, and that could take as long as a couple of weeks. So we're hoping that by the time phase 1 is done, in those areas, that we will have water and sewer by then, and that will allow us to start repopulating those houses that are still there. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Sheriff. We've had quite a few questions about the oncoming weather changes. We have a meteorologist here, so I'll let him talk to the oncoming wind shift.
Good evening. I'm Mark Luffenbein, one of the incident meteorologists here on the fire. Our winds are going to be out of the southwest starting tomorrow, and it's actually going to continue into next week. They will get a little bit stronger for us as we go into tomorrow, and on Saturday we are expecting wind gusts out of the southwest at ridgetop up to 35 miles per hour, but that is planned for. We are expecting it, and then they should calm back down a little bit for us as we head into next week. So we are going to get out of this northeasterly wind flow that briefly plagued us for the last couple of days. Thanks.
Thank you. With that, we're going to have one more question. It's on the spot fire in the dryer area. And after this, we will conclude tonight's virtual meeting. So for operations, Chad Cook.
Thank you. Yeah, a question came in regarding the spot fire that was located in Dyer this afternoon. So right there near Dyer Mountain, there's a communication tower. Just south of that communication tower and slightly east, we had basically a dozer line that is put in this location here and then an open flank to the creek bed. And what ended up happening was it actually spilled out. We call it a slop over, where it comes over the line. And it actually ran a little bit with the wind this afternoon. It burned about 15 to 20 acres. And what we ended up doing was we got dozers about 30% around of it so far tonight. We worked heavy helicopters and we put about 5 to 7 loads of retardant in there, and to with it with the crews that are stretching hose around it right now. We anticipate full control of the spot fire tonight by end of shift, and it will be staffed through the night and tomorrow to make sure we have full control of it. I think that would answer the questions that were asked.
Thank you so much for that, Chad. This will conclude our virtual community meeting for this evening. I do want to remind you that you can continue to ask questions. We will respond to them this evening. And for closing comments, we have Incident Commander Jerry McGowan.
Good evening. What I'd like to do is just thank everybody that's on here, and I would also thank all the cooperators and all the people working on this fire. There's a incident management team up there in Susanville. We're down in Quincy, and we're continually working together to make sure that we're in sync to try to get around 600,000 acres. We have 6,000 people on the incident, and right now, currently, together, we have 35% containment. So there's a lot going on. I would assure you that there's a lot of firefighters working very, very hard on all this incident. And with that, I hope you have a good night.
Thank you so much. This concludes tonight's virtual community meeting. We will have our next community meeting on Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. Thank you.